Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Makul with you at BTB World. In today's show, we will be taking a look at the political and economic situation of the country in a very special interview today with a guest in the studios that have joined us for this particular purpose. We'll be taking an overall look at where the country stands in terms of the political dynamics, especially impacting the kind of current economic challenges that the country faces, while of course policy level discussions are underway with the IMF and many certain conditions exist within the country, including political instability in Punjab and KP at the center as well. And we see that a number of announcements made by various political parties, particularly the PTI, is continuing to affect stability within the country. And so where do we stand in terms of our industries? Where do we stand in terms of our business community? And how much the IMF is going to impact this particular decision making, and where the government wants to proceed with regards to the challenges that it's going to face and has been facing for quite some time now. There's also, of course, the elections looming in Punjab and KP, something that is being talked about a lot by the PTI, as well as to the 90 days time that has been emphasized. But in terms of the announcement, of course, we know that there is no legal obligation, but whether or not the elections are going to be held or any such decision is being taken by the political setup, we'll be focusing on that and trying to understand where the dynamics lie in terms of the overall political situation in the country, and then of course the stances of various political parties. In our second segment of the show today, we're going to take a look at what is happening in our neighborhood in India. The Indian business tycoon Gautam Adani is in the eye of a storm after a dramatic crash in the stocks of his companies, and that is $100 billion that the company lost almost immediately after Hindenburg, a research that alleged that the companies has been engaged in stock market manipulation and fraud, one of the biggest stock manipulation in corporate history. Of course, there are other linkages being drawn with the Prime Minister Narendra Modi as well, who's been closely linked with this particular group, and the kind of political manifestation that this also holds, and the damage that it does not just to this particular group of companies, but in terms of investor confidence in the country as well, since a large group has been targeted and has lost a huge number of stocks and investment as well. There's also a large response that has been given by the Adani Group, which numbers at about 413 pages, in which they have outlined that they have never been engaged in any manipulation and fraud. In fact, have contributed to India's progress and economy, and so they cannot be questioned in terms of their credibility. This was something that was said in a press conference, but with regards to, of course, the impact that this has or is going to have on the way that India is going to be looked at by global investors still remain to be seen, which the Indian finance minister believes is not going to be much. But of course, there are people who think otherwise. So that's going to be our segment in the end of the show, where we're going to try and understand what's going on and the impact that it's had for India, and of course the global community as well. For this and more, as always, I've been joined in the studios by senior analyst Farooq Batafi in our first segment regarding the political and economic situation of the country and where we stand. Today we've been joined by the Federal Minister for Industries and Production, Mr. Syed Murtaza. Mahmud, thank you very much, Minister, for joining us and being a part of our show today. And let us start with you with regards to where do you think the country is standing? Currently, of course, there are huge crisis situations that the country has had to face, and we've inherited that, particularly after the ouster of the former Prime Minister. And then since that year, there have been many challenges that the current government has had to face, including political and economic ones. But let's start with the economic situation that we have currently underway, especially with regards to the IMF team that is in Pakistan and are engaged in policy level discussions. And this is important because all eyes are set on what the mini budget is going to be like, what sort of challenges that the people are going to face, and how it's going to impact the country in general. And so the IMF team is here till the 9th. What do you think is going to happen after that?
Thank you for having me. As you said, the country is going through a very tough time. And I personally feel, this is because of long-term flawed policies, and we all are to be blamed for this. All government, all political parties, all stakeholders, where we have come now. So it's important we learn from this, and we'll get short-term relief from IMF, but it's important that we have reforms and we have long-term policies, and we target sectors where Pakistan has a competitive edge, and we grow in the right sectors. So that is very important, and I personally feel that, political stability is very important, and we as politicians and political parties, we all have to act mature, and for Pakistan we have to sit together and at least have as there's very famous, we all discuss Charter of Economy. We should sit down and have a Charter of Economy. So that is very important for Pakistan right now.
You said, sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
You said that there are areas where we can grow. Could you identify what sectors are there that you have identified where Pakistan can actually grow very quickly?
Thank you, Pradhavi Sahab. The important thing is that we have to explore sectors where Pakistan has a competitive edge. Right now, rupee has devalued and our labor has become cheap globally. So we can, labor-intensive industry we can focus on, and areas like, if I give you an example, for example, gems and jewelry, we have natural advantage. Pakistan has gemstones, and unfortunately we haven't able to reach our full potential, and it was very sad to see that our total exports is around $6 million. And if you see our neighbor India, the export for gems and jewelry is $55 billion. And all the gemstone, majority of the gemstone is in Pakistan. So they're like such sectors we should focus on. And especially in agriculture, we have to focus on value addition and such things where Pakistan has competitive advantage.
Right. You talked about a charter of economy and something that was, of course, mentioned by the Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif, as well, as soon as he assumed office. But unfortunately, this is something that has evaded us, not, of course, in the past year alone, but many, many decades in the past as well. And as you mentioned, there are, of course, many political parties to blame and the kind of governments that have been there in the past. But as of where we stand now and how we want to proceed further and the kind of politicization that you've seen within the country, can we actually move in that direction? And if so, how can we involve all the stakeholders to enable a charter of economy to move ahead?
I think it's important we realize this. We don't have a choice now. The situation the country is in, and over the years, this all has piled up, and that is why we are here. So I think we don't have a choice if we want Pakistan to progress, and if we want to have sustainable growth. That's the only option.
But what efforts can be made to actually achieve that? From a government perspective, what can the current political setup do so that we can move in that direction?
I think it's important to have reforms. There's so many things, like, for example, we have, like in my ministry, I identified few policies which were flawed, like in which we were actually encouraging imports rather than encouraging manufacturing, and especially like SME sector. But like for the political consensus is required for other decisions, like for example SOEs and like such things. Like we have to sit down together. For example, the circular debt in WABDA and the circular debt in our gas companies. So for that we all have to be on the same page, because when we have, like for example, a government decides and crackdowns on some areas, like it's like the other political party takes advantage of that. So it's important we all sit down together and we are on the same page for such things.
Right. You mentioned SOEs, and there's of course discussion around privatization of SOEs, and Farooq also has been championing that as well, along with other economists and experts who've talked about this. But is that something that can happen as well, or is there any work being done to enable us to move in that direction? Because many other previous setups have decided or at least contemplated of doing that, but it has never happened.
It's unfortunate. It's been very slow, but this government is very aggressively working towards that. Under my portfolio, there comes a steel mill, and we've been very, my team, my ministry has been working really aggressively on that as well. So hopefully soon you'll see that steel mill hopefully will go into public-private partnership.
Okay. How do you think you will encourage the industry, especially in the current challenging times and in the aftermath of the tough conditions that, of course, are coming soon after the discussions are complete with the IMF? The industries are also going to face a tough time, just like the rest of us. But how can your ministry help and support them in this hour?
I completely agree. Industry is going through a very tough time. And nothing hurts me more when I see or hear that, a plant is going down. If it went down or closed down because of its own inefficiency, that would have been very different. But I would have felt differently. But because they are closing down because of import restriction or LC issues, so personally I feel very sad about it. It's important, after this short-term relief, we focus on the long-term relief for public as well. We've been only thinking about we think short-term as a nation, and I think we have to develop patience as well. So we have to give long-term policies in the right sectors, and we have to encourage, SMEs especially. I personally feel, if you take America, for example, it's a huge economy, and if you see companies start in the backyard and they go on to become trillion-dollar companies. So, and they take the country with them, and that's what we have to do. We need to support SMEs. IT has huge potential. So such sectors, and Pakistan, our population is like 70% is under 35. So we have energy, but we need direction.
Right. Farooq, when we talk about the industries and the kind of needs that they'll have, and especially in terms of bringing about the economy at par with reference to, of course, the current conditions that we're going through, and then also attracting investment and also supporting the SMEs or other business community within the country, what sort of challenges do you think you can identify in terms of the remaining fiscal year, and then, of course, moving forward as well, that will need our immediate attention?
Right, Sana. At this moment, because Pakistan has curtailed the imports in the country, that is why our output, our production output is also reduced because of the matter of LCs and all that. With any luck, if we strike a deal with IMF, the hope is that gradually this forex constraint on Pakistan and this constraint on our current account will be lifted, and then we'll be able to import more as well. With that and energy cost going through the roof, there are many challenges that still exist, and we have to wait and see how things actually progress. But let me actually, before I give you the mic back, let me also add to the questions regarding industrialization in the country that you were asking. Sure. Particularly, the minister just spoke about divestment, right? That steel mills can soon be, a public-private partnership. What are the plans regarding divestment, and do we have any roadmap, any timeline, how soon we'll start achieving that?
Yes,
Minister.
Minister.
Yes, thank you, Farooq. As I said, we are very close to the steel mill going to the privatization ministry. The work which was required in my ministry will be done soon. I'm hoping that, and I'm very optimistic about that. I personally feel, right now I'm focusing more on policy. The government plans to attract FDI in solar power IPPs. So basically, right now what I did was we made a solar panel policy so we can manufacture in Pakistan, and we are also we made a e-bike policy, because we in Pakistan $4 billion worth of fuel is imported and is used in motorcycles. So there's a huge potential. We can substitute that by introducing EV bikes, and I'm also working on petrochemical policy. So and especially SMEs, as I mentioned, they will play a very important role. They have issues regarding financing, their hurdles, their bottlenecks. So I'm trying to remove that. I'm trying to create a one-window operation where an entrepreneur comes and his company gets registered under he gets FBR information, WAPDA information, he gets energy connections. So that is very important. The government has to just facilitate. We don't have to regulate too much. It's just about the facilitation and incentivizing rather than giving subsidy. So that is the plan. I am right now trying to get the right people on the right posts. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Right. There's also, of course, the mention of entrepreneurs, as you said, and Pakistan, of course, witnessed a startup boom, and there have been numerous startups that have come, especially in the tech sector as well, and it's important internationally as well, and as we're moving towards AI and cybersecurity. But when we talk about startups now and the kind of challenges they face, Pakistan, of course, really has to protect and support them. And so in terms of policy interventions regarding the ecosystem of entrepreneurship, incubators, or startups, what sort of effort can the ministry play so that we we help support them and foster their growth, especially with also regards to VCs, since there's hardly any in the country?
It's not important that government regulates them. We just have to facilitate them, and they have, like, as you mentioned, there have been a number of startups. The government hasn't done anything about that. They organically they came up and they grew and like they became big. So
right, but if the government does support them, maybe they'll grow bigger. No?
Yes, what we can do is incentivize them, and for example, as I said, for SMEs, financing is very important. But with regards to tech, private sector is playing a very important role. They are getting funding, they're getting everything. So IT has a lot of potential. We don't have to do anything in the IT. We just have to erase the bottlenecks and red tape, and like they have issues getting their money back. So such things we have to just facilitate them. It's not, the government doesn't need to get involved in everything.
Right. There's also, of course, what you have done in your capacity in a mission to Indonesia earlier as well, where firstly you took the entire expense on your own, and then you also achieved a waiver for the export of palm oil, which was earlier banned by the government. What sort of efforts were required in such a negotiation, and the impact that this has had on where Pakistan stands at the moment?
Thank you for mentioning that. It's been a long time.
It's an achievement.
I almost forgot that. But because when I got this portfolio, so I was trying to prevent crisis. I saw this Bloomberg news where I read that Indonesia has banned exports on palm oil, and then I met the local oil industry, and they were like, they only had 15 days of reserves. So I spoke with the Prime Minister, I made him speak with the President. Then I went to Indonesia, I sat down with the ministers, I met 3 ministers, and they were kind enough. The first vessel to leave Indonesia was for Pakistan.
And you ensured that it happened?
I stayed there. I told the minister I'm not going back. It should leave before I leave.
Right. So when we take a look at the situation now, we of course need such proactive measures taken by ministries as well, especially in terms of the economic challenges we face. Which other countries do you think can be approached in perhaps a similar manner when we talk about our needs, and what sort of angles do you think can contribute towards the economy at the moment?
I think we have to be a little selfish. We have to start thinking about Pakistan. When we negotiate or have trade agreements with other countries, they're not negotiated very well, what I've seen and noticed. So we have to focus on our exports. As I said, we have to focus where we have a competitive advantage or competitive edge in sectors. So it's all about $30 billion is nothing. It's like, it's very little for such a huge, large populated country. So it should be at least double. So it's all about focusing in the right sectors and having agreements, right agreements, and thinking about Pakistan in that.
Right. Farooq, there's also, of course, whenever we talk about economic policies or decisions that impact the industries, there have been numerous economists and experts who've talked about bringing in all the stakeholders together as part of the discussions, well, taking in their input as well. There's, of course, the startup community, their incubators, or their investors within the country, or people who've been working within these fields for quite some time who have an input with regards to what their needs are and how they want to pursue. Can there be a mechanism in terms of actually going forward and involving those voices within this conversation as well?
All right, Sana, and before I actually start on that, I wanted to actually bring up something that you mentioned in passing, and that is AI. We have been talking about AI or investment in AI for quite some time. It seems at this moment that we are on the cusp of a revolution that is already underway. And I mean, by that I mean that today I spent an hour chatting with ChatGPT, that is the AI, right?
How was your experience?
And amazing.
Oh,
although
really?
it is so constrained, and there were so many regulations that it should not be politically incorrect. But by talking to it and learning about existential questions and then together exploring it was amazing. So the question at this moment is that while we look at these circumstances, while we look at shortcomings, in these things we can actually start working already. There are small companies that have already started it, but it doesn't take that kind of resources to start with to actually start training AIs, right? And the concern is that in this country, we have been hearing about AI, and we have been actually promising that we are going to set up institutes as well. That hasn't happened. Imran Khan Saab's time, even the president used to actually talk about it all the time, but we haven't seen the fruits of that labor either. So compared to us, when you talk about India, in India you have institutions like FICCI and an Exim Bank also, where you can actually see that R&D is not only supported, it is invested in, right? Really invested in. And in our country, if you go to counterpart of FICCI, you go to ours, you will not find that kind of resources. So I'm wondering at this moment, I totally agree that all these forces, all these elements should be consulted, included, but by virtue of being a libertarian who believes that government should not be in the business of doing business, let me actually once again ask Minister Saab, is it possible that there can be some coordination with the private sector that then we can ensure that R&D is of foremost importance?
I completely agree with you, Farooq Saab. Unfortunately, we haven't invested in R&D, and private sector also hasn't really invested in R&D. So there's a lot to be done, and I think for this we can utilize the universities. We don't even need to spend much money on that in the current circumstances, if I see. We just take advantage of the universities, and we can take, innovation is very important. And we haven't, what I feel is like, our industry, if you see industry, it's the same industry. There's textile, there's sugar, there's fertilizer, there's cement. But as I said, SMEs will play a major role in the future. We have young population. So it's important, research and development is very important, and for us to facilitate SMEs is very important. And the private sector, if we create that environment and give them the environment, they'll grow themselves. But unfortunately, we have so many hurdles and bottlenecks. It's very difficult for an entrepreneur to grow in this country.
Right.
So that is the issue. I agree, IT has huge potential, but
right.
We shouldn't be getting into the nitty-gritty, but we should be looking at the environment and creating that.
Right. I'm really moved, and I'm really happy that you actually are attaching that much value with SME sector, right? Usually it is thought MSME because micro is also a very important aspect. But let me ask you, when you go to the website of SAMIDA, right, that is the body that is supposed to actually coordinate with SMEs, you see the kind of proposals or suggestions that are there. And they are mostly about, cow rearing, poultry farming, and very small, businesses that might actually contribute to agriculture sector, but to overall GDP or its growth, and especially in the sectors that we mentioned, there's hardly any feasibility. Can that be improved?
Yeah. I completely agree with you. Our feasibilities on the website are outdated, and we are working on that. As I said, we have to be thinking out of the box. We shouldn't be trying. We shouldn't be having same solutions for the problems which we've had. So I had a very interesting meeting with this Pakistani. He sells on Amazon. His exports I was looking at, like revenue was $670 million. So I was very impressed. I am working with him closely, so we can, bring in new feasibilities. There's so many things we can produce in Pakistan, but unfortunately we are importing. I am even working with our mobile phone industry. I'm discussing with them because they are going through a very tough time. But this is the time where we have to learn, and where we can start thinking about our import substitution, and we can, there's so many products we can produce in Pakistan. So we are having right now, there's issue of dollars. So we should be thinking about exporting, import substitution, attracting FDI.
There's also, of course, the emphasis that you've laid on innovation and R&D, and that is extremely important, especially to have the kind of foresight when we talk about prioritizing where we stand today in terms of course, where the world is going. As Farooq was mentioning regarding AI, they're already ahead of us in a lot of ways. And so if we talk about R&D, and unfortunately, there seems to be some sort of hesitation from the industrial sector in terms of investing in R&D on a level which perhaps is needed to create that sort of innovation on a scale that the country wants. What emphasis can be laid in terms of developing R&D centers here within the country, since most companies prefer going out of the country for these services?
I think, we have, the government regulates too much, and our large-scale industry is dependent on subsidy. So if they're comfortable, why would they become efficient? So it's important, that there should be a competition. I'll give you an example. We just made the EV bike policy, and we gave 23 licenses. And so the 23 companies will come in. The efficient will survive. For efficiency, you need R&D for that. So it's important we, as I said, like there shouldn't be bottlenecks and hurdles. So the industry evolves itself if it's in the right condition. But if you protect it too much, they won't evolve towards efficiency. They'll be too comfortable. They'll stay like that, and they'll depend on the government.
Right. I also want to talk a little bit about the Chambers of Commerce and Industry that we have in various cities of the country. And it is a body with a large resource of industries and members together, and a platform for us to be able to work on not just these ideas, but many others as well. But unfortunately, perhaps the kind of role that the potential that the chambers have to play has not been done in the past. And I think just recently we've seen that the tenure of the president has been increased to 2 years. But before that, it was just a year alone, and not much can be achieved that. What else can be done to enhance and embody our chambers as a platform where the industries can then work with each other, and then of course for the country as well?
I engage with the chambers very regularly. I ask them if a policy should be made, or you need tweaks in the policy, or if there's a flawed policy which we can fix. But I personally feel our businessmen and our industrialists and entrepreneurs need to start taking risk. We don't take risk. We I don't like criticizing parties and governments, but like the last government gave amnesty in property. So when I see young people and I ask them, and they only invest in property, they should have been doing some business. Property is it doesn't generate employment, or it's just an asset lying down there that doesn't add to Pakistan's GDP either. So, and when the owner of that plot, the price goes up, he feels psychologically, he feels rich. He imports a watch, he buys an imported car, he then starts building a house and imports marble from abroad. So it's important that we start taking risk. We get into different, it's huge opportunity right now. I know it's very tough times Pakistan is going through, but there's an opportunity because of depreciation in our rupee. Our labor has become very cheap, so we can get into so many products and industry, different sectors. So our businessmen and industrialists should start taking risk.
Right. With your permission, Sana, let me circle back to EV, e-motorcycles, and then also various solar panels and the policies that we are going for. Minister, Pakistan is dependent on imports for raw materials, especially when you talk about batteries and solar equipment. You need rare earths and rare materials. So in this climate, when we are trying to substitute imports, and we are actually, there is a problem of LCs, how do you actually relate your policy with the ground reality that is there?
The important thing is the volume. We talk about localization in cars, and when I speak to the manufacturers, they talk about volume. Pakistan's peak volume in cars was 325,000. Now it's down. So in solar panels, as government is trying to put up 10,000 megawatts of solar power plants, so there is volume there. And we'll be the foreign companies would be coming. So we've kept incentives where they can, put up a manufacturing plant here. And we've also tried to incentivize our local players who can put up plants here. And if you have volume in Pakistan, you can target local market, our national market, and you can also look for exports.
Right. Now, Minister Sahab, last question with regards to what plans you have for your particular ministry in the rest of the fiscal year, and then, of course, till the next elections as well, in terms of what direction you're giving. Of course, policies and emphasis that you have laid on in the past as well, but how will you ensure that those policies are implemented, and what areas do you prioritize?
As I've mentioned SMEs, I've mentioned policies which I'm trying to make, and some are made. I'm also regarding EPZs. I'm trying to, we have 8 EPZs. I want to have more EPZs and SEZs, for example. So issue with EPZ was there wasn't enough land, and to get land, it's very difficult. It's like, after the 18th amendment, it's about the land is owned by the provinces. So I'm working on that as well. I'm working on PP model, private-public partnership model, where we can encourage more EPZs, and where the private sector can, when I speak with chambers and the industrialists, they have issues. They don't have land near the city. So I'm working towards that. I just need time. I hope I get enough time and I get this all implemented, because right now Pakistan is going through a tough time, and we all have to realize and learn from our mistakes. And I think it's important we focus on the right sectors. We have a huge potential for export. We should utilize that, and I'm working on that policies and creating that environment where private sector can flourish.
Right. Well, good luck to you, and we hope that you are able to accomplish that for the ministry and for the country. Thank you very much for being a part of the discussion, for coming to the studios as the part of the debate. That's all that we have from this particular segment. We'll do a short break and continue with the next one. Welcome back to the debate. We're now going to be taking a look at what is going on in India, especially with regards to the kind of crisis that the Adani group of companies have been facing after the report by the Hindenburg Research claimed that there has been a lot of stock manipulation and fraud at the largest level in corporate history in terms of what has happened. And because of that, more than $100 billion have been lost by the group of companies, which has put the country in a political and economic crisis because, of course, the kind of relations and associations that have been linked with the Adani group, and the Prime Minister is, of course, there and are a cause of much controversy. And then there is also the concern of global investor confidence within the country, since such a large group of companies have been impacted by this particular incident. We're going to take a look at this in further detail and try and understand what the situation is really like at the ground. We've been joined by Mr. Sumit Peer, who's a political analyst in India. Thank you very much, Sumit Sahab, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. Gautam, first of all, help us understand the scale and magnitude of this particular crisis. Of course, the kind of level that has been talked about in the particular report talks about this being a brazen stock manipulation and the largest con in corporate history, quote unquote. And these phrases have been used for one of the largest group of companies within the country. But what does this mean in terms of the impact this has on the group of companies itself? And then, of course, in general, the kind of investor confidence that exists.
Well, Sanaji, thank you very much for having me on your show. Well, ma'am, it's all, first of all, if we look at the Hindenburg, so-called Hindenburg, it is a 5-man company. Now it was a 10-man company. Now, if you look at the cumulative debt of Adani Group, it is 3.5 lakh crore and the assets are 12.5 lakh crore. So they are 4 times the debt. Debt servicing is not a problem. All the companies are in profit. All the lists are in public. And the FPO, which was for $2.5 billion, got fully subscribed. And even today, as we talk, the market cap is up by 20 to 25%. The shares have grown 25% of what they lost. It's a matter of time, another 8-10 days, the company will come up. And when you have a company with a foreign debt, it is but natural the big four audit you. So Adani Group has been numerous times audited by KPMG, EY, Deloitte, all the big four for the international debts they have, and they have all given a green signal. Our LIC of India, PNB of India, and the government of India has issued a statement. There's nothing to worry. It was only because of the short selling. And let me tell you about this Hindenburg Group. Now, Hindenburg Group has done this with Twitter. You remember when Elon Musk was trying to buy Twitter and Twitter was registered, they did a short selling. Short selling is not allowed in India, but is allowed in the US. And under the pressure of that, they had to sell it to Elon Musk for $45 million. Hindenburg is investigated by FBI for misappropriation. Hindenburg cannot do short selling of any of the stock listed on the Nasdaq stock exchange. So that was a temporary storm which came in, but the storm has weathered and the things are back to normal. We have gained 25% of the market cap, and looking at the things are going, it's a matter of time, maybe another 15 days or a month, it will come back to where it was. The fundamentals of the company, the debt servicing, the debt equity ratio, and the assets what we are talking about are in black and white. They are money making assets. They are not those software assets or intangible assets. And Adani started in 1988, ma'am. It's almost more than 30 years, approximately 30 years. More than 30 years. It is 35-year-old group. It was not born yesterday. And the financials and the credentials are quite solid. The investor confidence is reflected by the thing that the FPO got fully subscribed. And it was within related time, ma'am. Yeah.
Right. Sumit Sahab, you mentioned that the Hindenburg Research is a very small organization with about 5 to 10 people, and perhaps implying that there's not much value in what they're saying, but there still has been a 413-page response that the Adani Group has given to such a small company. Why is that so?
Yeah, this is a very valid point, Sanaji. You see, the stock markets and the sentiment of the market works on the sentiment. Because when such a thing is just taken before the FPO, which was one of the biggest in India, so it is but natural for the investors' confidence, for the market confidence, for the shareholders' confidence. Adani Group had to come with a response and dismantle the allegations one by one systematically with facts, figures, and data. There are 3 things to it. First of all the Adani companies are listed. All their information is on public internet. Secondly, they are audited by SEBI, they are audited by Indian auditors, they are audited by international auditors, so there's no embezzlement. There can be no embezzlement. If at all, for the sake of argument, there is so-called any alleged fraud in the Adani Group, then the big four of the world have to be questioned. Then every figure of the world is up for grab. Because if you cannot trust the big four and you cannot trust the audit system of the world, then nothing is certain. Then every number of the world is fluid. Well, that is not the case. That is why Adani responded. And you see, when you talk of the FPO, people like Reliance, people like Jindal, people like SR, they are the big industrial houses, and Mr. Mukesh Ambani's credentials are known to everybody. We cannot say that Mukesh Ambani doesn't know Adani Group, or Mukesh Ambani is naive enough to put money in his Adani Group. When these biggies have put their money, this makes the Indian Inc. and the International Inc. and all market forces have rubbished the Hindenburg report, and they are very confident vis-a-vis the financial credentials of the Adani Group now.
Okay, Farooq, what do you think about Sumit Saab's analysis with regards to the impact that this has had on the Adani Group and, of course, the rest of the country? It seems that not much has happened at all and no earth has shaken.
Right. Sanai was, while he was responding and you were asking questions, I was thinking, if I was sitting in that country, a loyal citizen of that country, where Adani's economic wealth is now, directly associated with the country's, rising fortunes, what would I say? Would I say anything different? I don't think so, right?
Okay.
But regarding Hindenburg, Hindenburg has a history of actually shorting companies where it finds that there's something bad is going on, some malpractice is going on, and how things are. A couple of companies that it shorted ended up from an IPO, not FPO, IPO of $36 billion. They were shrunken down to $1 billion. And eventually their bosses were arrested for actually stock manipulation, right? Here, what exactly are the allegations? Well, the first one is regarding, stock manipulation, that there are, certain companies owned abroad by Adani's own family members that keep on actually manipulating stocks and keep on reinvesting in the same stocks so that the value actually keeps on increasing. That is one thing, and ergo, the net worth has actually improved as well. Similarly, there is the concern that this parity between assets and liabilities, particularly loans, that is usually when you look at the ratio, it should amount to 1, at least 1, right? It is below 1. That means that the assets are over, leveraged, and they have been actually, borrowing has gone beyond the limits. So when this situation is there, of course, then India's own economic exposure is humongous as well. For example, he mentioned, LIC, which is, life insurance company of India. But bigger than that is SBI. SBI has the maximum exposure to it. So if things crumble and if really they go down south, today he's right that there was a surge in the stocks because yesterday Adani had announced that he will be actually moving ahead certain deadlines of repayment of certain loans. But those loans are there, Sana, and they are over, a lot of money has been taken for far lesser assets. So at this moment, it seems that anybody who's associated with India's government, who has a soft, corner for India's government, is bound to have soft corner for Adani as well. Adani also comes from Gujarat, whence Narendra Modi came. So you are going to keep on hearing about sab acha hai, sab acha hai. Eventually, whether it is or not, only time will tell.
Right. Sumit Sahab, there's also, of course, the link that Farooq has just mentioned as well with regards to the Prime Minister, Narendra Modi. And because of that, there have been questions raised with this particular scandal having political implications as well. Would you say that even with regards to the Prime Minister, any sort of political aspects to this controversy, there is no impact?
You see, first of all, Mr. Adani came into business. It was Mr. Rajiv Gandhi who was the Prime Minister of India, and it was 1988. And Modi ji became the Prime Minister in 2014. By 2014, he was already worth a few $100 billion. So Adani was not made in the tenure of Prime Minister Modi. That's point number one. He started in 1988.
Sorry, come again. What was his net worth at that time?
He was around $100 billion before 2014. So
$100 billion before 2014. Can you confirm this, sir?
Yeah, this is around that. I mean, I'm not very sure of the number. It's around that.
No. Sir, check your facts. It was not more than a couple of $1 billion.
Let me complete, sir. He started in 1988. So now, if you look at
no, you're talking about 2014, and I'm just fact checking your numbers. He could not possibly have $100 billion by 2014 when Elon Musk only had $2 or $3 billion.
No, we are not comparing with Elon Musk. Now the problem
is... No, I'm talking about net worth. He couldn't be the second or third richest person in 2014.
Third, he became at 200 something when he was second and third he became recently. Before that, he was in the top. He was always in the top 20 of India for last 20 odd years. It's not years.
That might be so, but in dollar net worth, he was nowhere near $100 billion before 2014.
Because if you look at the Adani incorporation only, that was 35.9, Adani Power 20. And if you look at all the companies, they're all in billions of dollars. There's nothing in millions. Point number one. Point number two, he started in 1988. It was Mr. Rajiv Gandhi who was the Prime Minister of India. It was not Modi ji. Point number two, when the biggest port was given to him, it was by Dr. Manmohan Singh. He was again from Congress. In the Congress tenure, and Mr. Adani is on record, and in the Congress tenure, he got his business started and reached a sizable stature and level in the Congress tenure. The biggest port of India for operation and running was handed over to him by the Congress government. So these are all allegations that he's close to Mr. Modi, and this is because of Mr. Modi he has grown. Now, incidentally, if you look at the fall of market cap, just I'm not trying to talk parallels here. Elon Musk has lost more than $200 billion and nobody is talking about that. And today, out of 60 to 80 billion dollars lost, around 20 odd billion dollars is recovered. It's a matter of.
May I actually explain to you why is it that nobody is talking about Elon Musk at this moment, even though if you are a Twitter user, you are concerned, or if you are a Tesla user, you are bound to be concerned. But the reason is no country's economy has this kind of exposure to one business or two businesses.
Let me explain you, sir. So even if you talk about $40 billion for $60 billion, we have a foreign exchange reserve of $578 billion. First of all,
nobody is questioning that. I'm talking about your overall market exposure to Adani's shares.
I'm coming to that. So $578 billion foreign exchange reserve. We have more gold than the whole of the gold put together. We are a $3.8 trillion economy. By PPP, we are 11.575 trillion. So this 30, 40, 60 billion dollars, even worst case, is not going to matter to a country like India, though there is not a case of worry at all.
Can you tell us how much SBI is exposed to, Adani's business, and how much is LIC exposed to it?
SBI and all are exposed, but let me tell you, the assets, the total debt on Adani ji is 3.5 lakh crores and the assets are 12.5 lakh crores. So the asset to debt ratio is 4 times. So there is practically, if we talk of economics, there's nothing. They are all brick and mortar assets. They are paying assets.
Right. Thank you, Sumit Saab. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for, but thank you very much for coming in the show and sharing your views with us. And thank you for, of course, for being a part of the discussion. That's all we have time for. We'll see you tomorrow.